De La Soul is one of those hip-hop groups who did not just make great records, they carved out an entire lane for themselves. They are back with their first album in 11 years. It's also their first album since Trugoy the Dove died. He was one of the 3 founding members of the group. We are talking about what this album means right now, and also how we honor the artists who built the foundation. I'm Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This is Commotion. Ian Steaman is here. Keysha Freshh is here. Hello to both of you. Welcome to the show.
Salutary, and salutations.
Hey, thank you. Thank you for joining us. Listen, on the way in, I'm sort of getting myself ready to talk about De La today and have this conversation. But also, we learned that the reggae legend and Jamaican icon Jimmy Cliff has died. He was 81 years old. If it's okay with you, I would like to start right here. Man, that voice, that Jimmy Cliff voice. Ian, I'll start with you, man. What's your reaction to hearing that Jimmy Cliff had died?
I mean, shock, obviously. He's a giant of reggae music, and I think of music in general. He's responsible for the popularity and the mainstreaming of this genre. So, to lose someone like that is pretty monumental.
Keysha, what about you? How are you thinking about the loss of Jimmy this morning?
Yeah, exactly what Ian said. I mean, he truly is responsible for popularizing just this, reggae music and on a global scale. So to hear that this morning was really shocking. He had a profound influence on not just, the Jamaican diaspora, but, the Caribbean, West Indian diaspora as a whole. So it was really sad to hear that.
I want to say that we're going to be spending a bit of time remembering Jimmy Cliff, both on this show and also with Tom Power. They're going to re-air the conversation that Tom had with Jimmy Cliff, I think sometime later this week. So this is not the last tribute that we're going to be, paying to Jimmy Cliff. So I want to return to that at some point later this week. But grief, shall we say, is a little bit in the air, right? Because that is what we are gathered here a little bit to talk about, right? So there's this new De La Soul album. It's called Cabin in the Sky, and that's what we're here to talk about. And I just want to play really quickly something from that record.
Step towards with a Goliath, got a David right here.
And you can save it right there. Yeah. Recognize the savior, the king send a string to whack the elevators. The difference between doing the job and just your nature.
That is a bit of the package from De La's new album. That voice that you're hearing there is Dave, aka Trugoy the Dove. He's a founding member of De La Soul. He died about 2.5 years ago. Keysha, I'm going to start with you. This is the first album since Trugoy died. But what you're hearing there is this idea of you can still put a record where you can hear him and see him and sort of see De La Soul honor him. How are you thinking about this record this morning? How does Trugoy the Dove show up on this record?
I mean, kind of the way we remember him showing up on the records, with his flavor and his style, his delivery. So just it's something so it's just poetic about him. You still feel his presence overall on this project. Him appearing on some of the records and the production. I don't know, it's a bittersweet feeling. I felt It's felt bittersweet listening to it, because it's like, even though he's not there physically, I really do appreciate the fact that the fans still get his essence and him showing up on the album.
We still have Pasta News, we still have Maceo, and it's something about, so Pasta has this new record, quote, lives in the space between loss and light. It's about the pain we carry and the joy that somehow still finds us. Ian, when you hear that, how are you thinking about Trugoy and the influence that he's got on this new album?
Well, I mean, you can really hear that feeling that Paz talked about throughout the album. I mean, Dave really, in a lot of ways, was the soul of De La Soul.
Yeah.
As you listen to the album, I mean, obviously they're negotiating grief and loss and mortality and what it means to be in a group and continue this group when one of the key founding members is no longer around. But his spirit, his voice, his energy, and really what they're talking about throughout the album is you just feel it throughout the album.
Spending this long without a new De La album, right, and then losing Dave, I think, to me, I thought that was going to be a signal that we're not going to get another De La album, that sort of that ship has sort of sailed. And then were you surprised to hear that they're like, you know what, we still want to do a record, we still want to do something that honors his legacy?
No, I wasn't surprised, because my understanding is that, Dave had actually been sick for quite a while, and if I know those guys at all, they've been planning and thinking about what it means to continue the legacy of the group. I'm sure they were kind of planning on stacking as much stuff as they could in terms of work and songs with Dave, so that they could kind of continue his legacy. So in a lot of ways, I wasn't really surprised.
Keysha, what I like about this record is that it's not trying to recreate some kind of 90s moment. It feels grown, it feels reflective, it feels honest and very rooted in right now. Do you think audiences today are more open to, I guess, like groups that we think of as legacy acts, like legacy hip-hop acts that have established an entire tradition, entire legacy, that were basically a reflection of where they are now instead of the thing that we're familiar, with, the thing that they've always kind of given us? Because I feel like this feels like a little bit different and feels very rooted in where they are right now.
Absolutely, and as a fan, speaking from a fan and an artist standpoint, as a fan, you don't necessarily always want to hear your legacy artist stuck in a time capsule. You want to hear that growth. You want to experience the now, the maturity, the whatever they're going through, and now and today, and not what we remember and might have loved from the 80s and the 90s. But from an artist standpoint, it's also the same thing. We're always, trying to find a way to grow with our audience. Yeah. So I really respect how they did that throughout the whole album, to be honest. There's still that De La touch that we love and grew with and knew, but it still feels like such a fresh, new vibe. And I love it. I love it.
This is all sort of leading up to a conversation, I think, about how we celebrate hip-hop legends right now, right? And I think like a good example and way into this is, let's play another track off this record. Have a listen to this.
Unsmackable, half of you laughable. You won't be photographable if I have to run through half of your crew. I'm only trying to get smarter, like 5%ers at Parliament Harlem. Rep the bottom, run it back. Not the bottom like the bottle of snake wine with a snake still in it. We sip and see if it takes top.
That's De La Soul, a bit of Nas there called Run It Back. This album was released on Nas's record, Mass Appeal. It's part of this series called Legend Has It, where they sort of celebrate all these hip-hop legends. Keysha, I'll come to you on this first. For listeners who might not be familiar with this, can you just quickly explain what Nas has been trying to do and how De La Soul fits into that sort of moment?
Yeah. Nas Mass Appeal right now, obviously under the leadership and guidance of Nas, as we know that's his label, has this Legends Has It series where it kind of feels like a comic, like a superhero series. We're seeing releases from Ghostface. We're seeing releases. We have the De La release. Nas and Premier have their album coming up. There was a Big L album release. There's about 7 or 8 albums that they've released since the end of 2024 to now, where it's classic hip hop legends that we grew up with and that I grew up with. And so I think it's just really cool how he's giving them their space, giving them their own kind of moment in hip hop right now, where there's a lot of noise and stuff happening. He's carved out a space for them to have their own time and moment to shine with the Legends Has It series. I think it's really cool, and I'm loving it. I'm loving getting to listen to my heroes. I love it.
Yeah, it's worth noting that like it's a moment of celebrating these heroes. It's not an archival project. Like that's not what this is. It's meant to be like this is where your heroes are right now.
That's right.
Yes.
And I think it's something that like for me, I've been waiting for hip hop to do that, right? To sort of say, you grew up with these people. Here's where they are right now, and also here they're doing the best work of their career. I think Nas is doing the best work of his career, and that's saying something, But there's something about celebrating them now as opposed to trying to say, oh, you're not celebrating some '90s version of them. It's like where they are.
Exactly.
In their life.
I mean, I think the big knock on hip hop, which I think was largely unfair, was that it was a young man's sport. Yeah. And nobody wanted to celebrate the heritage acts, the legacy acts. And I think time has proven that to not be true. But for Mass Appeal and Nas to really put a kind of fine point on it and say, like, these artists still have something to say as grown men. Like we don't just have to listen to teenagers. And there's so many of these like amazing albums being put out by these legends who are 3-4 decades into their career. Is a really fantastic thing.
Yeah, and that's why it matters to sort of meet, De La Soul at a place where they're like, oh, they are grieving people. This is what grief sounds like when you've lived a long life, you've done a lot of things, and also you've lost somebody who means a lot to you. This is what that picture of grief sort of looks like. I want to go back to De La for a moment, and I just wanted us to take a step back and listen to this right now.
I was born in the boogie down cat scan, when my builder fell down on the rat scan. People so the super want a trip to the P now. While I settle off the shores of the Long Island. My father's clean, my mind is clear when I transmit. I am the man of the family because the pants fit.
From 1993's Balloon Mind State, that is Break It Down. Ian, you got to work with these guys on the record that time. When you said the words, if I know those guys at all, that's because you worked with them quite intimately during this period of time. De La Soul was locked in this long beef, right, with their label, where their music was kind of shut out of the digital space for years. For years, you couldn't stream them, right? Like that was not sort of an option. So as the world stepped into the streaming universe, De La Soul was for the longest time not available, and then they lost Trugoy, and then they kind of end up in a place where their music is suddenly available for streaming again. Is there anything from those early days that you think kind of give them the resilience to keep carrying on and keep doing the work, even though people were talking about them a little bit less than they were?
Yeah, I mean, listen, these guys are soldiers, and they've been fighting a lot of battles for a lot of years.
Yeah.
Since their first album, it's such an iconic release that kind of changed and shifted the music, and I think shifted them in a way they're still reckoning with even to this day, right?
Yeah.
So I think they've always kind of, every album they've released since 3 Feet High and Rising has been them negotiating like what they want to say as artists and what it means to be in a group like De La Soul and have the perceptions that people put on them.
Yeah.
And I think, Cabin in the Sky in a lot of ways is kind of the culmination of that. And Balloon Mind State was kind of an interesting shift away from where they had been on their previous 2 albums.
Mm-hmm. Keysha, I don't think we'll ever really know the impact that it has on an artist to be shut out of streaming for so long, because it was a really long time. I remember the day and the celebrations of like, oh my God, De La Soul are back on streaming. You can now go to Spotify, you can go to Apple Music and be able to stream them. But this is their first album since that whole situation got resolved. How do you think a record like this ends up landing with a new generation? Maybe a generation that hasn't had as long with the back catalog because has not been available for streaming.
Yeah, it's understandable, to look at it from a lens of like they're kind of catching up because, we know Nas and Mob and those guys, their catalogs have been available. So if the younger generation ever wanted to go back, they could. But I don't know. I'm seeing it land really well, and I also do want to attribute that to the media run that they've been on. It's great to see them, appearing on different podcasts and mediums that connect with the younger generation really well. So even as a younger artist, it's a moment of discovery. It might be a moment of discovery, introduction, and I think that's also really cool as well. Music is timeless, so to still discover a group like De La being an up-and-coming artist, it might be a breath of fresh air. Because I remember first hearing De La in the 90s, a breath of fresh air, and it still feels the same, right?
Yeah, I can imagine that. I can imagine somebody saying, okay, let me dig into their back catalog now that I see it's available in front of me, and sort of having your mind blown. But the other big story here is that this album is also a bit of a reunion, right? Like they've not worked with Prince Paul for a minute. It's been decades since they worked with him, and then this album is a return to that. How do you think that reunion sort of fared out creatively on this record, Ian?
Well, I mean, when I listen to the album, it in a way it kind of encompasses their entire career in terms of there's always been a different sound. Their sound has evolved over each of the course of their albums and their discography.
Yeah.
And, I hear a little bit of that kind of free spirit that they had on 3 Feet High and Rising and De La Soul is Dead. And I hear a lot of what they were doing on the Anonymous Nobody and the AOI series. And so to bring Paul back into the fold to be part of the creative process for the album, it seems like they've managed to distill all of these different elements and stages of their career and their sound into one record. So it's a really beautiful artistic statement.
We talked about grief, we talked about loss, but also I'd like to end on a bit of a high note. So I'm going to ask each one of you, if you had to sort of sum up your life with a De La song, what would you go with? Ian, why don't I start with you?
Oh God, that's a tough question. I don't know. I'm gonna go with a track from Balloon Mind State, which is the first album I got to work with them on. And there's a song called I Am I Be, which I think was largely misunderstood when the record came out because it was such a vulnerable statement of identity and trying to figure out your life, which I think could apply to almost anybody, whether you're a hip hop fan or not. So I'm gonna say that.
It's a beautiful pick. And Keysha, last word to you, pal. What do you got?
Mine is definitely Ain't All Good. We're with Shaka Khan. I really, truly believe that song sums up who I am. You know, he said, don't come shaking my hand like we peeps. It ain't beef, but be sure to understand between us, it ain't all good. You know, De La's a staple in my catalog. I even have the shoe. You know, it's one of my favorite sneakers of all time. So they're a staple in my catalog. So yeah, that's the record.
That's a perfect place to leave it. I appreciate your time. You guys have been wonderful. Thanks again for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ian Steaman is a TV writer based in Toronto and former A&R rep for De La Soul. Keysha Freshh is a Juno-nominated rapper, also based in Toronto. That record, De La Soul's Cabin in the Sky, is out now wherever you stream your music. My name is Elamin Abdelmahmoud. This show is called Commotion. We will be back tomorrow. We will see you then.